Saint Irene Chrysovalantoù, the bent cypress trees, and the levitation of the saint. I'm going to tell you my experiences with the saint. Tremendous miracles. But let me tell you about the levitation. The second miracle, the tradition conveys to us concerning her life as follows. On starry nights, Saint Irene stood outside her cell of the monastery and prayed. And this is something that Saint Clement of Sarmata used to do as well. He used to go out in the summer, in the nighttime, and pray, and other monks that were following him at night saying, "Where is he going? Why is he leaving the monastery? Where is he heading to?" And one of them spied on him and saw him levitating as he was praying. So this is also what was happening with Saint Irene. On starry nights, Saint Irene stood outside her cell and prayed. One of these nights, a sister was keeping vigil outside her cell and saw the following paradox. The two towering cypress trees, which stood on the left and right of the entrance of the church, bowed before the praying saint as if they were bowing to her, and Irene herself did not touch the ground but hovered above about a meter, that's about 3 feet above the ground. When the saint had finished her prayer, she made crosses over the two cypress trees and they returned to their normal position. The nun, amazed, the nun that was, of course, watching this, with mixed feelings and fear and admiration, restrained herself and said nothing to the rest of the sisterhood. And the next night she kept vigil outside her cell again, and the same paradoxical event was repeated, and again the same for the third night in a row. And the next night the nun, without her abbess noticing, ran to the bent cypress trees, tied a white handkerchief to their tops, and returned to her cell. Many of the saint's miracles disappeared in the silence of her entourage. This is by priest Gelas Arsenios. And now my experience with Saint Irene. One of my cousins was noticing that I was pensive and skeptical about something, and she asked me what was the matter. I told her that one of my friends, who was, we were the godparents to one of her sons, was having a very difficult time with her husband, who was unfaithful to her, and I was very distraught. She said, "Well, why don't you come and pray to Saint Irene?" And she took me to this area. It was very close to our house, the monastery in northern Athens, Greece. And I had a problem. She says, I had a problem. There was a huge icon of her in the monastery there, the church. And I said, she says, you can pray to her. I said, "I have a problem. I can't pray to a painted piece of wood." And she says, "Just do it. Ask her for help." And then we went into another place of the church where there was her icon, tiny little icon with one candle lit next to it. And then my friend said, my cousin actually said, go and ask her, and you'll see that in less than a year, the thing will, she'll help you. So again, I said, I can't, I have a problem. And then she says, "Just do it, So I did. I said, if it's for their good, please reunite this couple because they're having a problem with their marriage. And then I turned and left with my cousin. My cousin kept on asking me. She said, "How's this couple going? How's this couple going?" First of all, she said, "You have to fast 3 days without oil. In other words, no dairy, no meat," which is pretty simple, actually. You could have a salad with peanuts, or you could have a macaroni with tomato sauce. Anyway, it goes by fast. Peanut butter toast, whatever. And I also asked the girl, my friend, whose husband was unfaithful to her, to fast for 3 days. And she said, "I'm not going to smoke for 3 days, and it's easier for me to fast because I don't eat meat," she says. So she said, "I'll also cut out smoking." So my cousin that took me to the monastery to pray to Saint Irene, kept on asking me, "What's happening with this couple? What's happening?" And she said, "You'll see, in less than 9 months, it'll happen." And it did happen. Her husband returned to her on bended knee, asking her to take him back, and she did, and they were even more loving than before. But anyway, that was the beginning of what happened. Then I went back, and then my cousin said, "Go, you have to go back and say thank you to her." So I went back, and I got into the little church where they had her little icon with one candle inside, in that church, and all of these people started flooding in through, praying to her and kissing her icon, and there was a general, then there was a policeman, there was a grandmother with children, with her grandchild. There were all these people coming in and out, and I couldn't approach because I wanted to be alone. I couldn't approach to thank her because I wanted to be alone. So I waited until everybody left. So finally, I was alone, and I hear a little voice coming from her icon. She says to me in Greek, she says, "Did you see all these people coming to me for help? I will help all of them. I help all of them," she says. And she says, come to me. And I came to her, and I said, "Thank you. And I just want you to know that our saints are alive. Our saints are alive just like Christ is alive." So this is what happened with the beginning. And there was many others. I remember one of my cousins was heading for a surgery for some kind of an exam on his heart. And he wanted to go to St. Irene's monastery, but every time they came to visit us, it was very late, and the monastery closes around, 6 in the afternoon. So I took him to another church that had an icon on a mural of her on the church walls. But the church was dark. And he said, "Where do I go?" I said, "Why don't you just go ahead by yourself and let St. Irene guide you?" He was going through the church he had never entered before, and his wife and I were following him. And he goes and he goes and he goes and walks in and walks in. He stops in a dark corner, and he stands there, and he says, "Who is this?" I said, "Look up." And he looks up, and it was the icon of St. IRENE CHRYSOVALANTOU. That's how easy it was for her to guide him to her icon. It's amazing. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this. You can even make a copy of this and pray to her as well for her intercessions to Christ. She was supposedly a princess. She was supposed to come to another area, a region far from her home, she traveled extensively to meet her bridegroom, but by the time she got here, he had married somebody else. And that's when she decided to become a monk, a nun, a monastic nun. And that was the beginning of her life in a monastery, in a nunnery, in a convent. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.